gonna rock the sweatshirt today.
This is the Team Objection podcast for February 11th, 2021, episode 471, and Dave is so chomping at the bit to get his hot take out into the universe that he's talking over the intro.
Didn't know you hit the button.
That's okay. I like that it was for something important.
It wasn't at all. In any way, shape, or form. I honestly had no idea you hit the button. I looked over and I'm like, oh shit!
Mm. To be fair, there is a visual cue that you can see, but it's subtle at best. And, but I also don't do anything like we used to do. Back in the day, it would be like, all right, we're going to start now. And then I'd pause for a couple seconds and I'd do a minute-long intro of, here's the headlines we're going to do. And we don't do that anymore, and I don't miss it.
Coming up on today's show.
And then we'd have to have Molly read if that's her name, whoever she was.
Don't remember.
Forgot just all about it.
Mm-hmm. We're going to rock Shaun's segment, except this time because the panel that runs the segment, which is, like these adjudicators who float out them in the universe, they ruled that Shaun's hot takes last time were not hot enough for him to contribute to this segment. Now, he could still chime in and rate everybody else's, but he's not actually allowed to bring one to the table this time. He's on a one-episode ban.
I mean, that's fine. I don't have anything. So I don't need to bring a hot take, but I disagree. I think my takes were pretty good.
You guys, I have two hot takes.
So I won't do it, but because it's my decision.
The panel means nothing to me.
I don't have to listen to the universe.
You can't fire me. I quit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what is this? The Screen Actors Guild? Anyways.
Exactly.
All right, well, I'm going to let you go first, Dave, because I think I can segue out of one of yours, although I thought you only had one, so now I have
two.
to
I'm going to go with my quick one first, and then I'll go into the in-depth one second, which is the one I was talking about when I told you earlier.
Okay. I can't wait for these to be the frostiest takes I've ever heard.
Hey, if it happens, he'll be banned for an episode because the governing board doesn't play favorites. If the takes aren't hot enough, you're not allowed to bring them to the segment next time.
Okay. I have a hot take.
Good start.
Tom Brady is not the greatest athlete in history, nor is Michael Jordan.
That's not a hot take.
Because it's Wayne Gretzky.
It's a little better. It's a little better that you added Michael Jordan. If you were like Tom Brady's not the best quarterback of all time.
That's just a stupid take.
You're getting warm there.
I don't know how you can argue against him. I mean, another Super Bowl win. And in dominating fashion, too.
You're making my point for me. That was your hot take, that would have been a good one.
No, my take is that he is by far the best quarterback, but he's not the greatest athlete, as some people have said, team sport athlete, nor is Michael Jordan, because Wayne Gretzky exists. And as an anecdotal thing I've heard, there were fantasy hockey leagues back in the 80s that had to split Wayne Gretzky into two players, Wayne Gretzky, the goal scorer, and Wayne Gretzky, the assist getter, because if you just had him, you were just too dominant, basically, which is kind of amazing, I think. I don't think Jordan had to do anything like that.
Well, what about like Tiger Woods and Serena Wilson and Bill
first
Russell?
Of all, Serena Williams, and I said team sport.
What did I say?
Wilson.
Wilson. Like
Whatever.
Russell Wilson.
She plays with the Wilson tennis balls. It's the same thing.
Sure. Sponsorship.
So that's the first hot take. I feel like I've seen so many people arguing that Grady is the GOAT of GOATs, which is a stupid phrase as is. But I don't think so at all. I think he's the best quarterback, but I think people discount how good Wayne Gretzky was in hockey, and maybe because it's not such a popular sport anymore, but my God, the guy holds records that literally will never be broken.
Yeah, the man posted career numbers that will never even be looked at. Not even, there's some numbers that have changed over time, like baseball, for example, the 300 wins club. It's hard to imagine a pitcher getting there because their innings are so regimented, their careers are shortened, there's so many more career-threatening injuries. It's really hard to imagine, right? Like the closest person was like 210. So that seems ungettable. Pretty much everything Wayne Gretzky did as far as an offensive statistic, you just look at that and you're like, no, that's never going to be touched.
No.
Never.
I mean, the distance he put between himself and like second place was something in the lines of like if you added together someone's goals and assists, you wouldn't even hit Gretzky's goals in the season type of thing. It was just it wasn't even comparable to anyone that's been around before.
You're having a super season if you score a point a game. in the NHL. And that's not even just the modern NHL. That's kind of just in general. Like a point per game is the metric. He scored 2.5 points per game in one season. 2.5. Where it's just like, all right, so on a given night, Wayne's going to get basically like a goal and 1.5 assists every night. Every single night, he's going to find the back of the net and or make a teammate do the same thing.
So guaranteed 2.5 goals a game for your team, which will win a lot of games in hockey.
Maybe we should change the metric of like what the greatest of all time actually is. Is like a lot of people, they say impact on the game. That's why Jordan for many will never be touched, is because it doesn't matter how many titles you win. Other people do go titles or accolades, but I don't know. I wonder if it should be like, who would I most want on my team? You know what I mean? Like, who would I most want to play? If I was in Space Jam, I had to recruit a teammate. Who would I recruit out of all of history? Would it be Tom Brady? I don't know. If Joe Montana was in the same situation, could he have had the same success? I don't know.
Yeah, though that's always the toughest thing about team sports. That is always the big argument. It's like, because it's a team sport. Yes, you matter. Like the greatest player matters absolutely, and it makes a difference. But you can't. It's hard to compare apples to apples in that. I mean, you're right. If Tom Brady was on with a team like, swap places with Joe Montana in their prime, would Montana do what Brady did? Possibly. I don't know. But for me, especially like cementing Brady as the best ever, the fact that he did go to a new team, his old team took a dive after making to the AFC Championship game last year, and his new team won the Super Bowl. There is a common thread in there.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Yeah, and he wasn't the reason they won. Although
No.
he was very good in the first half. He was I think MVP is deserving because it's hard to single out one defensive player. The defense and their dogged pursuit of Patrick Mahomes is what won that game for them.
Yep.
But Brady was an excellent game manager, and again, it's hard to argue with only 4 incompletions versus 3 touchdowns in the first half alone. And we talked about his career stats in the playoffs on last week's show or the one before recently. I think it's, at this point, as much as I don't like Tom Brady, I think it's hard to say that he's not the best football player of all time. Mm-hmm. Best athlete? No.
Yeah.
No, and I think there's a lot of different metrics by which you could measure that, and I don't think he passes any of them. Because he's not the best team player as far as titles. That's more of a Bill Russell type. He's not the best pure athlete because he's got a phenomenal arm and a brain for the game, but he can barely move. That's been the case even before he turned 43. And you have people like Jesse Owens out in the world where you're like, that might be the best athlete of all time, and that's certainly not Tom Brady. And I don't even think he's the best in any sport because, like you said, Wayne Gretzky exists.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You can make a fringe argument for like a Bobby Orr or a Mario Lemieux who was like Wayne Gretzky light. Nobody comes close to the great one. Whereas, in basketball, we've talked to death the Jordan versus LeBron debate, and there's a couple other names that might be floating around there. There's some people who are close. No matter who you think's the best basketball player of all time, it's not like it's light years ahead of anybody else in the field,
Just for the last punch of Wayne Gretzky has 2,800 career points, so that's goals and assists mixed together. He's the only player to have more than 2,000 points, and he has 970 more points than the runner-up. So
I think he has more assists than anybody else has points. Is that correct?
I think it's something along those lines. I don't have the number here in front of me. Yeah, he has 1,900 assists in his career, and no one has 2,000 points total. So.
It's kind of weird because we only caught the tail end of his career as we were growing up. That was sort of like the end of the Edmonton into the New York days, and there was the Kings mixed in the middle. But I still watched enough of him to be like, holy shit, that dude's the best hockey player I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And even for me, who still thinks Jordan might be the best, I look at LeBron and I go God damn, he's so good. Maybe he is the best I've ever seen. I look at Brady and I'm like, I have to acknowledge what he's done in a sport that has a lot of parity. Just being in the Super Bowl and winning it in 3 different decades, it's remarkable. It's a testament to how good he's taken care of himself and his desire and his dedication. So, I have to give him his props. That said, he seems like an asshole sometimes. And, I was actually kind of rooting for the Chiefs in this game, and it didn't pan out. So, all right, the take so far is warm at best.
Yeah, that's like an ice cube melting in the Phoenix pavement. It's it's still solid, but it's melting, but it's cold to the touch.
To be fair, it was a hockey take, so it was kind of icy.
All right,
that makes it drop. Now it's ice cold. The ice cube has regained its frigidity.
Yeah, the governing board is considering your pun, and I'm looking over here, and they have ruled it is not helpful to your case.
Damn it. Damn it. All right, well, I'll see if I can redeem myself with my next one.
All
But
right,
you
you
can
said
go
this was a
first.
bigger one, so
Wait, should
So
Chris get to go now? Or should you guys get to switch?
no, he's going for both of them.
I'm doing both. Okay. My second one, my second hot take. I have a hot take. Ironically, it's based off of a tweet that starts with hot take.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it fits right
Could be
in.
a good start or an awful start. Let's see.
So the tweet that I see that someone liked says, hot take. Outside of extremely specific technical jobs, 90% of the white collar workforce is basically lying about how hard their job is, which is why imposter syndrome is even a thing, because people have trouble accepting, oh, literally any person can figure this out. And overall, my hot take is I am so sick and tired of the belittling of people working unless you're like, it feels like in America basically, unless you're doing physical labor, you're an evil person. And I'm just sick of hearing this.
All right. On the
So-
surface, before we go into it, I think we're off to a decent start. This is better than the first one for sure. I will say this. I kind of agree with you in the sense that it does feel like there's been pushback now where forget the pandemic, which has made us reevaluate certain jobs in a different way than we had before. Okay, there's definitely some merit to that. Like grocery store workers are example 1A for this, where they were an afterthought before, and now people are forced to realize, like, well, they're working on the front lines in a pandemic, so like we have to kind of give them more props than we did before, right? It does feel like, look, I can't sit here and compare what a construction worker does on a daily basis to what I do. Okay, they're very different jobs. The manual labor is something that I could not and would not want to do. So I'm not trying to say that they're the same or they're worth comparing in that sense. It's just blue collar used to just basically mean if you put in a hard 9 to 5, no matter what you were doing. And it seems like that meaning has shifted to be a convenient argument for whoever wants to make it. And that means it's happened in different ways over time. It's not even just one take. It's different ones that just bolster whatever argument you want.
So what bothers me the most is I think arguments like that take away from the bigger issue that actually does exist. Because I do believe there is huge economic disparity problems throughout the country. You know, there's wage gap that you talk about. There's people that do work hard and don't make ends meet. And that is something that I think can be addressed through different means. However, just saying that working hard means that you deserve something, or saying that people who have money don't work hard, which is the argument I've seen of basically if you're a billionaire, you're evil to the core, you're Satan. If you're a millionaire, you're Satan who just hasn't killed as many people yet, basically. And if you're in the top like 10% of income earners, it's like, well, you're just an asshole. Like you just haven't like there seems to be this thing like the less money you make, the better of a person you are, which I don't understand that mentality one bit.
I can't weigh in because I don't know what your hot take is.
My hot take is
like 4 different hot takes.
My hot take is I'm absolutely sick of. My hot take is this is a stupid mentality to immediately shame someone for being successful.
Oh, okay. I thought you were trying to make a case of like, and I don't know which way you're arguing, but like, should person at McDonald's be making like the same as someone in X industry or whatever?
I have always maintained that you are paid what you are worth, and it sucks that people who do work hard and maybe work 60-hour weeks in a job that doesn't have any specific skills or like relatively replaceable skills. It sucks that that's how it works, but that's just how it works, and it's not that easy to change because you have to differentiate yourself in order to make money. So it's not that they don't work hard, and I don't shame anybody for it, but just saying that you're a white-collar job, 90% of you don't have any distinguishable skills, I don't agree with that statement of that tweet whatsoever.
I had an adjacent hot take to this that I didn't think I was going to have time to get to, but it was one about the federal minimum wage.
I mean, it does connect.
It does, but I don't want to take away from yours till we've adjudicated it. So,
I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I mean, I guess the hot take that I would say is like, and I'm not really doing this, but I'm trying to make sense of yours. Is like someone who I think everybody should get a livable wage. Whether that means I necessarily agree with the across the board raise, like I don't know. I'd have to take a look at that. That it seems like a lot all at once, but they could be really good. But to say someone in a job that takes no training and no prerequisite skills should make the same as someone in a job that does require those prerequisite skills is not equitable to me.
I think that any one of our jobs, the three of us have, someone off the street could not walk in and do, or even with 6 months of training. I don't think any of us could just walk in and do after having training for 6 months.
I agree. But on the other side, I don't go into my job thinking, man, this is like so hard. And if I had a job that was like construction work, I would be like, this is so difficult. And I know when talking with some friends of the show, I won't say who they are. I probably could, but they worked in a job where it was like, all right, waking up and I'm going to go do whatever manual labor task is laid out before me today. To be able to go into an office job and sit down in air conditioning and do all the work, like, it can be stressful. It can be mentally taxing at times, for sure. But like, I feel very lucky to be in my job, and I feel lucky to say I don't consider it to be like ultra hard all the time.
I agree. I feel super fortunate that I have the job I have, and I no way am I going to say that I'm better than somebody else because I have the job I have, or they didn't work hard enough because they don't have the same level of success, in air quotes, that I have. It's just a stupid thing. But the mentality, it seems like just spending time online is, if you have a successful job, you shit on all those who are below you. And I think that's not commonplace with people. And I think it's a stupid take by a lot of people.
But that's, so to get back to it, I think you have an icy cold take though, because I so agree with you. I think you make a great point, and I think most people would agree with you. But that means that your take sucks.
Well, I don't know. Like, most people, I don't know. Maybe the three of us do, because we try to look in the middle of things. But you take a look at a lot of Twitter, you take a look at a lot of Reddit type of thing. There is a huge mentality out there that if you work a white collar job, you're basically stealing from other people, and it's idiotic.
I'll give you that. I don't have either of those, so
yeah, and it's weird because how much of social media is either a vocal minority or majority, you can never really tell, right?
Yeah.
Because just by looking at the subset of people who are on social media, you've already sort of self-selected the group. I have hot takes related to social media, too. This is great. Everything's coming together. I will offer my hot take on this one right now, just to get into it real quick, even though it's a topic we could talk about for 25 minutes. I have a hot take. I think a $15 minimum wage long-term is fucking terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Awful. I understand it for the short term during the pandemic. I think it's important to get people up to that level to help them have more of a livable wage. And I, like Shaun, do support the idea that people should be able to, even at the most rudimentary of jobs, be able to make enough to support a family. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing for a country of our status to say, to make happen. However, 18 states of the 50 right now are at the current minimum wage, which is $7.25. Now look, there are huge problems with that number. Okay, especially when you adjust for inflation and the amount that the minimum wage has risen in relation to it since about 40 years ago. It's awful, okay? However, the idea of doing it so quickly, long-term, creates all the problems you guys already mentioned, especially when it comes to relative wage. Because what happens to the person making $7.25 an hour? They almost double. What happens to the person making $11 an hour? You can't raise them just to $15 as well, can you? Because they also were already making $4 more an hour than the people that were below them. In the economic sense, not a status.
Of course.
What do you do with people making $15 an hour who now have a horde of workers rising up to their same level? What do you do with people making $20 an hour who make $5 more than the minimum wage, but just saw people making $8 less get an increase to make them much closer to them in commensurate value? Mm-hmm. People will say it doesn't matter, and that if a business is worth anything, it should be able to pay its workers a livable wage. And I say, it is not that simple.
No.
It is not that simple. I like the ideology, but to just blithely put out a take like that and say, well, of course, everybody should make... It's like, yeah, it'd be nice if everybody were millionaires. There are a lot of things we could fix systemically with this country if we could make everybody have equal wealth somehow, but that's both unrealistic and stupid, to be frank.
Mm-hmm. I've always argued the biggest problem with having a $15 minimum wage nationally is the severe cost differences of the country. Yeah. Wyoming, $15 an hour minimum wage. You're not going to be living high, but you could survive on $15 an hour. $15 an hour in New York or San Francisco, Who cares? That's not giving you a livable wage in those cities either. So yeah, you raise the minimum wage. It's got to be more localized in that sense. And it seems like the push right now is to make everything centralized. And I think that causes its own batch of problems.
Yeah, it it seems like we could have gone about it in a more gradual way. You take a look at the places where it's 725 and you try to get them the biggest gain, but not 15, not more than double. And then you look at places where maybe it's 10. They still get maybe a little bit of a gain, bringing them closer to 15, but not just making it's 15 everywhere and we're doing it. I don't know what it looks like. If it was like Flagstaff, they're doing a gradual approach. I don't know if this bill is come X date. It's just everybody starts making 15. But it seems really tough. And it kind of depends on the political side of the fence you're on. But for, if all the conservatives are like, oh, see, you agree with us. It's like, well, no, because I think a lot of your policies are what has kind of led to this being such an issue. Like there should not be a minimum wage that's still $7 whatever an hour. That is not good for anybody. So everyone has fucked up, basically, is what I'm saying. And I don't know the best way to go about it, but it seems like $15 an hour, you're only asking for more problems down the road.
Well, the real way to fix it, and it's never going to happen, this is a pipe dream, is to stop seriously supporting the companies that are the worst offenders of this to cause a systematic and market-driven rise of wages. If you stop supporting McDonald's and Walmart, the people who are the worst at these types of things, and I think if you can start supporting other ones that maybe have higher wages for their employees to show that that's the one you want to support, and if we could get a groundswell of a huge majority of people that start supporting these other companies that do pay their workers a minimum wage, and that is known, it will force these other companies into raising their wages because otherwise they're going to lose business. And that's what it comes down to, is business.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it won't happen. People go to McDonald's and Walmart. Walmart is packed and is the worst company in the world, and I hate it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you in an idealistic sense, but I just kind of wonder, to argue against my own point, which I know hurts my hot take standing, but I'm willing to risk it. Maybe it will take something so drastic to shake free of the shackles of something that has been systemically changed over the last 4 or 5 decades. Maybe you can't just gradually undo that, because to do it would take as long as it took to get to this point. I mean, I'm not sure. The only way to really ever know for sure would be to implement something like this and see what happened. I just worry about the economic aftershocks of such a drastic change so quickly. So, I mean, I don't know what the answer is either. That's the only downside. Is my hot take doesn't come with some other accompanying thing like, instead of this, do this. I just don't think this is the right way to go about it. Again, in the pandemic, for the short term, fine, because it's going to get some money to people who desperately need it. But in the long term, I don't know. And here's one last thing, too. Democrats have been pushing back a little bit on some of Biden's legislature here, too, where some of the most fringe left people are suggesting that maybe the funding, the $2,000 that everybody's supposed to get, we've already gotten $600. Well, some people have. Maybe that $2,000 should only go to people making $50,000 or less. And this is the inverse of the problem we talked about before, which is like $50,000 a year goes a hell of a lot further in the Beltway than it does even just in Flagstaff. Forget those extreme examples Dave mentioned, like in New York. In Flagstaff, $50,000 a year is barely enough to get by with a family. So even that poses problems because people are just trying to think too localized and not big enough picture.
The problem is, with so many people, there's always, in social media at least, or when you talk to people, there's always the answer, and that's never the case. And that, as you said, there's no right answer. There's no this is wrong, so this is right. There's no right answer because there's too many factors to put in.
It seems like the pendulum is swinging too far in some cases. I know student loan forgiveness is another one for me. Mm-hmm. Yes, I am a little bit annoyed. I will admit, I paid off my loan, so
Same.
now to hear that I potentially, from a way of looking at it, wasted $20,000. That hurts a little bit. But at the same time, I get it. A lot of people, we know sometimes they're young, they're being asked to make these huge decisions. There's a whole, machine. We're just a cog in it, all of that. But it seems like 50,000 is a lot of money. And maybe, maybe it's less than that. Maybe I think Biden was like, what if we just do 10,000? That seems more reasonable. Maybe even 8,000. Or maybe we do a tiered thing. if there's a med student with $200,000 in debt, maybe they get a bit more than an English major, which is what I was. So don't be offended. Maybe that major gets less so that there's more for the people who could really use it.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm in a weird middle ground because I paid off my student loans a few years ago, but Courtney still has student loans left from her master's degree. So I'm in a weird ground of like, and right now all student loan payments are frozen. Like you don't have to pay. It's no interest. You don't have to pay if you don't want to. So I'm sitting here with like, I could pay $250 a month every month and I could pay down my balance. Or if I wait, do I just not have to pay anything at all? Like,
right.
I'm literally at this point where I'm like, this is stupid to make a payment right now. Why in the world would I make a payment if this legislation is coming in a month where I won't, like, I'm just throwing $250 a month into the garbage, basically.
And you could better believe if I was in your share, I'd be like, please let this pass. But, but no, I mean, like, it would be nice if there was a way to do like, oh, you paid off your loans. I mean, this, you're talking about pipe dream. You're talking about living in a dream world. Here's like some credit, like good job.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen. But because of that, it feels like you're being punished for being responsible. And in the real extreme, those not responsible are being rewarded. Although, of course, it's not that simple. It's not the only reason someone hasn't paid off their loans. But
sure. I mean, I'm with you too, but I had that same feeling where I'm like, this is probably for the best. And I should not want people to go through what I experienced, which was 15 years and 30 grand of repayments. But at the same time, I think it's only human to at least feel a little bit annoyed. As long as that annoyance doesn't come at the expense of wanting to do what's right, I don't think that's a problem. I think that's a perfectly human reaction to it. And I do recognize the fact that even compared to when I went to college, the costs have gone up exorbitantly. Yeah. So it's not even the same conversation as when I went, because now people are racking up 6 figures in debt for non-medical or law school degrees in some cases. And you're like, holy shit. Because to your point, you're right. And John Mulaney had a good bit on this too, where it's like you're asking people who are no way mature enough to make these type of decisions to make like life-changing, financial-altering life event choices when they're like 18. God forbid you spend more than 4 years in college, or you change your major, or you don't want your degree, or you can't apply it to your field. Like, holy shit.
I have an anecdotal story of where I had one of my student loans my freshman year. I basically had an overage, for cost of living. And so I got a $4,000 check when I was 19 years old. I was just handed a $4,000 check. And I'm like, this is mine? Like, I have no expenses. I have $4,000. Okay, I'm going to buy a PlayStation, and I'm going to not go to work anymore. Like that was the thought at 19. And I feel like I'm a relatively responsible person. But, like, you give that much money with not understanding the consequences down the road, even though I intrinsically understood it, like, didn't really understand it at the time, what that actually was going to mean. And that, like, it's a recipe for disaster. Because you just tell a kid, here, sign this paper, you get 50 grand. Okay.
Well, and I know plenty of people where they're like, oh, I'm getting a huge amount of money. I'm getting overage on my financial aid. So I'm going to take 3 credits a semester. I don't even know how they're able to do this, because you would think that doesn't meet whatever criteria there is to keep getting the money, but they've figured out a way to keep getting like they're just being paid to go to school and barely at that. And that's crazy. And the other side of it, like, I like universities. I actually think what they're doing is good. I think education is extremely valuable. I don't even blame them as much as I blame like the economy of when someone comes to college, our hope is they're going to be responsible. Maybe they're going to get a job, pay as they go, have some savings they can bring into it. It's not our hope, and what happens all the time, that they don't do that. They take out a huge loan, never thinking or realizing the repercussions, and they just get nailed later.
It kind of overarch all of this in a lot of ways when it comes to loans, business in general. Like, the whole student loan thing kind of started because the government had a program called Sallie Mae, and then that went away from the government, got privatized. But it's backed up by the government in taxes. So basically, Sallie Mae can't fail, so loan to everybody as much as they want, because the government will back you up and say you can never bankrupt it. You're going to get paid no matter what happens if you give out this loan. So there's no risk. That happens in financial institutions where, you're going to get bailed out if you screw up, like it did in 2008. So basically, anytime you claim to want free market, which I tend to agree with for the most part, but then you have that safety net of the government bailing you out. Well, free market stops working when that happens. And that's what's most frustrating about all of this, I think.
Because the free market's great as long as you're the one benefiting from it. And that's the prime example of what we saw with GameStop. and short sales and that whole fiasco where it was like, wait a minute, this is working against us now. This has been an easy cash cow for us over the years, but I don't like it now that they're making money off of it and we're losing. Now we have to regulate this. It's like, oh, that's an interesting take from somebody who's been profiting off this for the last decades.
And I know, I think it's SoFi. Dave, you probably know more about this than I do, and I know there's only so much you can actually talk about it, but like, I know there's a way to, if you make diligent payments for like 15, 20 years, you can knock off 5 to 10 years of the end of the thing. It's like, that's our current model of loan forgiveness. And I think something like that, maybe even extended, so it's not 20 years, which is like, that's a lot of time. I think that would be very reasonable, but to just say, here you go. Someone just graduated. I mean, like, I don't know how this loan forgiveness program is going to work in my head. Someone just graduated college, didn't work a day or whatever, and it's like they get all this money, they can immediately pay it off.
Yep. I mean, it would give them a huge leg up, that's for sure, and that's the idea behind it. I almost like the idea, Shaun, you actually make a good point of what if there's a system where it's like, okay, your loan payment's $250 a month? Well, now it's $125 and the government will take care of the other half of it. And so you're getting like half of your loans paid, but you still have a responsibility of paying like that. So it'll give people relief in some way. I don't know if that's a solution, but...
And what does it mean for the future?
Yeah, I don't know. And like, I'm spitballing for the most part. But
no, I know. That's not to challenge your point. It's more so to challenge the people who are just like, yeah, just forgive all student debt. It's like, yeah, in perpetuity as well, as the cost continues to rise?
Yeah. There's no answer on any of this stuff, and I think that's probably the most frustrating thing for a lot of people is that it feels like there should be an answer because the government can just do it, right?
We often talk about how like there's no simple answer. We have earlier this show about like there's never just like one thing we go, oh, just do that. It'd be nice if there were. I wish it were that simple. I wish you could just look at a systemic problem like this and go, well, actually, if we tried this approach, it would probably just work. And that's not to suggest you just sit there paralyzed by indecision and don't try anything. I mean, I think it's worth making inroads. But to just suggest that it's just like, yeah, just do this. It's like, oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you've taken the time to do like full-blown economic studies on this to see what it means in 50 years when you've done something like this today.
Yeah.
Because,
we couldn't have known, but we should have named the show like The Gray Space or like something along those lines because it really is the epitome of everything that we do.
Yeah, like the Gray Area podcast or whatever.
Yeah, Chris and I have been wearing gray. It's perfect.
I mean, this was the Team Objection podcast because we thought, hey, TOP, like top. We've not once used that acronym. Not once. I mean, I use it on like some labeling that I do for like episodes and stuff. But other than that, we don't use it. We don't say it. But we could have been the Gray Area podcast. We could have been Gap. And then we would have been sued. And then that would have been a problem. But we could have done it.
Wait a minute.
Instead, we let somebody like influence the name and then they abandon us. There's your hot take.
It's a pretty hot take. The panel's now whispering to each other. They're uncertain about whether or not they should support this.
That's actually not a hot take. That's a fully agreeable take, and everyone agrees on it, so it's not a hot take whatsoever.
That's true. It's actually problematic. It's kind of like Dave's first take, where it's like, I like where you're coming from. I agree wholeheartedly, but because I do, it can't be that hot of a take.
Exactly.
All right, so let's rate Dave and my joint take, sort of, that molded into one thing.
I mean, what political affiliation are you? It probably determines how hot you think of a take it is.
Yeah, true.
Isn't that stupid? Like, I feel like the three of us run the gamut of a political stances, I think. Me being QAnon, farthest right as you can be. Mm-hmm. Shaun's, lefty, in bed with Bernie, basically. And Chris is a little bit more in the middle. I
think we're all pretty much in the middle, but
I know we're all
that works though.
It's basically like, here's the middle. I'm a little right. Shaun's a little left. Chris is up right in the middle.
Like, I'm a Marxist. So.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm an independent, which is pretty rare because most people who identify as independent still lean pretty far left or right. Not like extreme, but you know what I mean. Like they're pretty staunchly one or the other, and they just identify as an independent instead. But Dave's in QAnon and Shaun's in Antifa, so
yeah, exactly.
That's how we balance.
Shaun reads Mein Kampf, and
yeah.
So, but that is insane that would be how people would take that, because I think your take, Chris, is actually really agreeable because, and that's it makes it, I guess, not hot in that sense, is that you probably are right that there would be very unknown long-term impacts that are not going to be favorable if you just immediately raise up the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
I mean, it sucks that you can't just undo that quickly. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can and it would work. But to me, when it takes decades to get to this point, that much of a change is a shock to the system, and I don't think in a good way.
I agree with you. Again, I'm agreeing with everything, which is just we're failing this hot mark.
But I know this is actually still a hot take because at the very least, again, if you go off of social media, which again self-selects, but the majority of people would have ratioed me into the ground if I post that on Twitter. Verbatim to what I said here. I would get ratioed to death.
I am stunned at the number of people that just go along with that mentality on social media. Like, and the reason I even give a little bit of credence to this is because the sheer number, and I try to pay attention to make sure it's not the same people shouting in the air, and I see a lot of the same takes from many, many different people that just get kind of posted throughout different things or people share or whatever.
I mean, it's the ultimate echo chamber, so I suppose to a certain extent it was inevitable. But
Dave, what do you think about this? I heard on the radio today that all we need to do to secure elections is equip every voter location with surveillance equipment so that at all times we can monitor everything that's happening in HD. This was put forth as a simple solution to eliminating voter fraud.
Ah, okay. So every voting location, does that mean my desk when I vote by mail? Are you going to have an HD?
No. They don't want mail.
no mail
of
ballots.
Course.
Those are fraudulent to the core. Well, I mean, the Republican ones, those were not fraudulent, but those mail-in ballots, including the president's, those were all valid. The other ones, however,
I'm actually pretty even keel when I listen to this stuff, and then I heard every state that opened up has better COVID rates than states that shut down. And I was like, that's bullshit. There's no way that's true. You're just saying things now. I was yelling at my car by myself.
Here you go, Shaun. I have a hot take. Marjorie Taylor Greene was right about everything she said. There you go.
I don't even know who that is.
I can't believe they censored her like that.
I know. She's getting the truths out there.
She got canceled, and
she had to go and say that it wasn't true, like gun to her head, basically, right?
We just want to say whatever we want to say with no repercussions, not backed by fact, and you can't let us do that, so you're censoring us. That's the other one that I just get an absolute kick out of.
Yep. I mean, haven't you heard of the Jewish space lasers, Shaun?
Yeah, he hasn't heard about any of this, and he's probably for the best. You know why he hasn't heard about any of this? Because he listens to Republican radio in the car. Although I'm surprised it hasn't come up as like an infringement upon her rights, but
to be fair, I try to listen to NPR. It's orchestra 23 hours a day, so and then the other half hour is the solicitations. So you get 30 minutes of news, which is great, and I like it, but like that's it.
Well, I'm going to do two more rapid fire ones real quick. Ones that are not worthy of full discussion, I don't think, but I'll put them out there anyways.
I wouldn't have derailed us if I knew you're still going. I
apologize. It's okay. I only got to offer one that I was piggybacking. I didn't even get to any of my main ones. My main one I'm going to save because it will require further discussion. Okay. I hope I don't say it and you're like, nah.
Part 2 next week.
In theory, it should have been a topic that Shaun would have loved, but now he's taken his own time away, so that's his fault. I have two hot takes. I don't care if how the segment works. It's my fucking segment.
It's pretty close.
It's my show, goddammit.
I mentioned before I was going to go in on social media, so these are not actually all that hot. These are more just rapid-fire calls to action and a desperate plea to get people to stop. Number one, please, for the love of God, stop starting any tweet with the words, "Am I the only one?" Because I guarantee you, you are not. And it's just a cry out for clout on social media at best. You are not the only person in the vast universe, certainly not this world or anybody on it, and probably not even within your own circle of friends that you're posting to get likes from. So just stop, okay? You're not the only person who thinks it's weird that bell-bottom jeans are coming back in style. You're not. I'll just go ahead and reassure you right now. Let me just go ahead and answer any of your future posts that go down this road. You are not.
God, I'm so glad I didn't start any phrase on today's show with like, "Am I the only one?" That would have been really bad.
It was benign at first, you saw them infrequently, and it was almost meant to be almost like colloquial, like, "Hey guys, like, am I the only one?" Now it's like people think it's more literal, and it's like, no, you are not. Stop. You are not coming up with a hot take.
No, that's a stupid way of starting things, and just a very me-centric type of thing, which has its own host of problems. So yeah.
I don't know how to feel about it because it's like I know. It's a very much meme culture, and you get sayings that become the saying so often that like my face win shortened, and now it's just an acronym because everybody knows what it is because it's said so often. It's interesting. I don't know what to do about it. Maybe I'm just old. Maybe that's the problem.
That's probably it. You know, I used to be with it, and then they changed what it was, and now what's it seems really weird and scary to me.
Yeah, but
so
I would say even when I was young, I didn't like what was it back then, and I don't like it now either.
So you just never liked it.
Yeah, maybe that's it, Dave. Maybe that's why everyone hated me.
Yeah. You know, the other social media thing I hate that people post, it doesn't happen as much anymore, when people put like nobody, absolutely nobody on the entire world, and then they'd have some saying afterward. I'm like, I don't get what you're trying to do here. This is stupid.
Extending that joke didn't do it any favors. I don't mind the nobody colon and then an example right after. I think it's a little overused, but I think that's funny. But then like the 3 or 4 lines of lead up, I'm like, you're just delaying the punchline for no additional purpose. There's no point to this.
I have found that where like the first memes are good, and then you get, by the time we reach saturation, and you know it's saturation when people who aren't funny are now using the meme, it's over. It's done. Cooked.
Yep.
It's dead.
Okay, final hot take. It's related.
All right.
I'm pretty confident that along the lines of Am I the Only One, where you're not, at this point in 2021, with global communication being what it is, that you are definitely not the first person who's thought of something. And this applies in a lot of ways. It applies to the creative field, like what Shaun does with writing, where it's like, man, how do you come up with any original ideas? It's like, well, you can't really. It's more about your take on those ideas and themes and how you do it, right? But similarly, it's also about basic stuff. Here's my one example about people who need to stop doing this. I still follow poker. I came up in the boom of 2003 with Chris Moneymaker like a lot of people. Dave and I watched poker quite a bit back then. We played a lot in high school and college. I've gotten back into it a little bit recently. So occasionally I'm watching poker streams. There are players who just are doing like $1,000 and up tournaments on Twitch where you can just watch them and they're playing for like $1 million. You're like, holy shit, this is cool. And you can see their cards. Because, you know, would you really want to watch hours of a poker stream if you couldn't see what the hell they had all the time? And then there's people who show up in the chat and they go, if you could see their cards, how come the other players at the table don't know what they have? And they're actually serious when they ask this question. They're like, you guys should not do this. You're going to give away information. When you watch a broadcast that's not from an individual streamer's perspective, you can watch like some of the professional broadcasters, especially during the pandemic, doing an entire table. So you can see the whole table's cards, which is pretty cool because you can see like, oh shit, like there's aces over there and kings over there. We're going to be in for a collision. So you can see the whole table's cards, and people show up in the chat and they're like, it seems like it's pretty silly to play a tournament if everybody knows what everybody else has. And it's like, for the love of God, just once in your life, practice some motherfucking critical thinking. If you think that you are the first person who has ever thought, boy, this is a problem, you probably aren't.
What if they had a moderator and they were like, holy shit.
Oh my gosh, shut off the stream.
We've been giving the cards away the whole time. Wow.
I'm not saying not to try and put original thoughts out there because it's impossible to try and regulate that. You know, you don't know what somebody in India posted on Twitter 6 months ago that happens to be similar to yours, okay? Now, don't plagiarize, but, you know, come up with original thoughts. But if you're thinking like, wow, nobody's ever thought of this before, in 2021, the answer is almost certainly they have, especially when it's that dumb.
Or at least a component of things. Maybe not in this sense because that is just dumb. Like, clearly it's on a delay, maybe. I don't know. But, like, the idea, like, people think of components of things. So maybe you've combined two ideas that not a lot of people have thought of, but for the most part, somebody's thought of this and considered this. That actually ties right back into all of our other, conversations about economics of like, when people say, oh, you can just fix it by doing this.
Yeah.
Don't you think people have considered that? Like, taken that into
The answer is simple. That's maybe another one. The answer's simple, everyone. Anything almost always that is followed by the opening phrase of the answer is simple is certainly not a good answer.
I'm imagining like there are economists who have spent their entire lives steeped in this and just trying to learn as much about it as they can. And then they read on Twitter and they're like, well, shit, guys. Goku Vegeta 69 says that we should just do this. I've been doing this for 40 years in this field. I've never even considered such an idea.
Yeah.
There's a great meme I saw where someone's like, "Honey, get over here! I found something that all the top scientists in the world missed."
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
looking at the computer.
I mean, and even with something close to us like basketball, I freak out all the time, and I'm like, oh, we need to do like big sweeping changes. I go to read like the Lakers board, and they do it all the time too, and it's like the people at the head of it probably like a lot of times they know what they're doing, and like it's a good call to not blow up the Lakers squad, which is what they were calling to do last year and the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's fair to question stuff. It's fair to put it out there. Just don't present it as though no one else has thought of it and you're a genius, because you're setting yourself up for failure. That's all.
So here's the thing. Here's the pro. I like what this segment has done for getting out ideas that we're passionate about. That's been really good. It's been great conversations. But like we all keep agreeing, and so I need to do a thing where I'm like, I think
I don't want to
we
go back to
really
this.
need to take another look at child labor
Those
laws in
exist.
the
It's
United
episodes
States.
1 through 200. We lived through them already, and that's the problem. Is like it's a good segment idea for what it's become, but it's antithetical to what the show's about at its core, because we're not out there posting ludicrous hot takes.
I mean, it's hard to find a hot take that is both truly a hot take and like legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because if you look at nuance of anything, of course, like there's always gonna be an argument that you can say, okay, all right, I get where you're coming from, but
yeah,
well,
I mean that's exactly it. So yeah,
just call up Skip Bayless and get him on here, and that'll help.
I have an NBA hot take for a future episode.
Okay.
But we have to be able to talk about the NBA again, which we're trying to balance it. We're trying not to do it all the time, and then we need another hot take episode. So it needs to be the perfect storm. But
my main one didn't even get used. I have an entertainment hot take.
We should just do a part 2 if we don't have anything else next week. Which, like, let me look at my planner to see if we've already planned ahead.
Well, if I can finish a certain game quickly enough this week, maybe.
Oh yeah,
that's true.
Dave was like, I think I'm almost done with Persona 5 Royal. We were like,
no, I wasn't.
I don't think so.
No, what state are you in? Oh, it still starts with a 1. Well,
yeah.
But yeah, we do have a Persona 5 Royal review coming at some point. Finally, we've teased it way back in like April when Shaun and I were beating it, but we thought, well, wait till Dave does it, and I think that'll be good long term. It's now February of the following year, but we're going to do it.
It'll maybe be good long term. I forgot half the stuff I was going to talk about.
That's okay. I have a whole. I mentioned this in our text thread, but I have a whole. I found a wiki that actually lists like all the changes that Royal did specifically, so we can kind of go down and be like, oh yeah, this was really good, or this didn't really have an impact. It'll help.
Well, and by the time Dave is ready, we're almost going to be ready to review the Strikers game. Well, actually, I don't know if you're going to play it.
I think I will.
Okay.
I've come around on it recently. Well, I used to like the Musou games, and if it's this theme with its canon, I think I will.
Well, everybody's saying like characters and the aesthetics and everything is great, but then somebody else is like, it's kind of less like Musou and more like a Kingdom Hearts action game. It almost has like its own identity. I'm like, even better.
Yeah, all the better.
Great. Yeah.
Alrighty. So I'm looking at the governing board, and they are doing a throat slashing motion because they don't even understand the segment anymore. Yeah. So they're convening right now to see what the future of Hot Take is. We'll find out as well the next time we do it. That's the end of this episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com, or at youtube.com/objectionnetwork for cold takes 7 days a week. We'll see you next time.